Ladies and gentlemen, the President of American Slaves, Inc., Mr. Norris Shelton.
Thank you. Thank you. On February 5th, 2016, I delivered my State of the American Slave Nation address. Today is February 10th, 2016, my 79th birthday. For more than 40 years, I've been trying to alert America of impending disaster, and my mission is not yet complete because I don't think America has heard me yet. I don't want to carry the intelligence I gained while on the economic battlefield to the grave with me. I will therefore, today, try another speaking tactic. Today I'm going to deliver the state of the blacks in America who think they're African Americans address. Maybe that will get America's attention. Effort is being made at the highest level of our government to make Black History Month African American History Month. I cannot stand by silently and let that happen without telling so-called black leaders what is really happening in America. Slavery is being covered up. I'll say that again. Slavery is being covered up. And ignorance is the glue that keeps slavery hidden in plain sight. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Black History Month is supposed to be held to honor the slaves of old, to celebrate their existence and pay respect to their being in America, born in America, and suffering all through slavery. In that regard, we should celebrate American Slave History Month, not Black History Month. Black is a color, not a culture. Black History Month and American Slave History Month are meaningless. They're misleading, and they do nothing more than spread ignorance. Descendants of American slaves, aka African Americans, are in a deplorable condition. But because television and other news outlets show some slaves as doing well, the true condition of descendants of American slaves is not seen or realized. Misconception and racial ignorance has taken center stage in America. Rich hip hoppers, sports figures, corrupt politicians, famous movie stars, and other well-off, well-known descendants of American slaves who mistakenly think they're African Americans are the most ignorant of all. And I don't say that in malice. They don't realize they're part of descendants of American slaves' culture, or that their ignorance is hurting their people. Now don't get me wrong. I love famous, rich, well-to-do black folk, even if they do think they're African Americans. But I wish at some point they would wake up. It's time to wake up. They must gain the intelligence so they can understand what is really going on in America. For example, take the riots that started in Memphis, Tennessee, long ago when we thought we were Negroes. These same riots are nothing more than a continuation of those riots that erupted in Ferguson, Missouri. It's a continuation. Now listen, we've got to make the comparison. Racial conflict in America is and always has been between whites and the slaves that America bred. Let me give you an illustration so you can make a comparison. If true African Americans were to start rioting and raising hell in America, they would have their green cards revoked. They would be deported back to Africa. Descendants of American slaves can't be deported back to Africa. We've never been in Africa. Slaves aren't deported. They are transported to jail if they survive the altercation. If we want to stop racial violence in America, we'd better understand clearly what races are involved in the racial violence. To me, that's just plain common sense. My contribution to Black History Month is to expose descendants of American slaves' real problem so we can stop celebrating Black History Month in ignorance. It's time to stop skirting the real issue and recognize the barriers that stand in the way of curing America's racial problem. Now here's the biggest problem. Black leaders, or gatekeepers as I like to call them, they're standing in the way of their own people's progress, and it's my job to expose them. Now I know they won't like public exposure and will consider me their enemy, not realizing I'm trying to help them. If I don't tell descendants of American slaves who are leaders where they're going wrong, who will? I'm just doing my job. I have tried to reach well-known descendants of American slaves, including Oprah Winfrey. I mention her only because she is reported to be the richest descendant of American slaves in America. She's even richer than a lot of rich slave masters. She is in a perfect position to help her people, but I believe she is confused about who her people are. I say this because I don't believe Oprah Winfrey would build schools in Africa for Africans while her people, descendants of American slaves, stay submerged in ignorance right here in America. I've watched rich descendants of American slaves. I believe most are good people. I love Oprah Winfrey, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, and all the other so-called African-American leaders. But I won't let my love for the leaders of my culture stop me from showing love for the least of my people at the grassroots level, because they're the ones who are really hurting. They're covered up. Nobody realizes that because they're looking at the rich ones. I'm going to tell you something. It's time for descendants of American slaves who are leaders to wake up. It's time to wake up. You've fallen asleep at the wheel. Dr. King gave us specific instructions, but you're not carrying them out. Put aside your shame. Don't be so high and mighty that it's beneath you to follow someone onto the economic battlefield who understands America and understands how America does business. If the division among descendants of American slaves who call themselves African American leaders is not bridged, or if they don't come together, genocide will surely become the fate of the American slave culture. I've seen movies that say abortion clinics are extermination points for Black Americans. And they might be. I say ignorance will be the main destroyer of the American slave culture, simply because African American leaders don't understand America's racial problem. Descendants of American slaves are angry. And because their leaders are confused, they are perpetually lost. They riot to vent their anger, but don't even understand why they're angry. They think they're angry because some white politician or some policeman killed a Black or an African American. They think that's why they're angry. One of their own gets killed by a white person, and they take to the streets and start rioting. But they don't even understand that. So I'm going to explain it to you today. We need to stop right here and understand this. because something is definitely wrong with that picture. Now here we go. Black folks or African Americans kill each other every day. We read about it in the papers, we see it on the news. We're killing each other by the numbers. And not one building is burned. Not one. Now what's wrong with that picture? A white person killed a black person, and we start trying to riot on America and burn down buildings. Yet we're killing each other all day long. So something's wrong with that picture, and we need to find out what it is. Every person, white and black, who hears this message have an obligation to help fix America's racial situation because it is clearly broken. I've researched the situation and I've drafted a sensible plan. And for those suffering through the Willie Lynch syndrome, and you don't want to follow another slave, then follow the plan. Don't follow another slave if Willie Lynch has a grip on your mentality and you don't want to work with each other, then at least follow the plan. The American Slave Renaissance Plan. I drafted it following Dr. King's instructions. And we always tie Dr. King into Black History Month and things like that. This plan, the Renaissance plan that was drafted to cure America's racial ills, was drafted at the instructions of Dr. Martin Luther King. We were Negroes when Dr. King was leading us. That's what we were, Negroes then. We shouldn't get upset because our name has changed. During Dr. King's regime, that's what we were called. Now we're called African Americans. I'm not saying we have to change that. We have to change the reality of it. We can't change that it happened, because that will always be a part of American slaves' culture's foundation. And slavery will always be a part of the foundation of America. Without slavery, America couldn't have come this far. It's time for positive change. So let's stop showing our ignorance and get on with correcting the mistakes America has made in the past. It's time for positive change. That's what President Barack Obama was advertising when he was running for office. Well, it's time for positive change. And we need to make that change while someone here, an elder, understands how to make that change. Because we have to perform an operation on the mentality and the heartbeat of America. And that's a very delicate operation. ASI needs your help. We need to understand what's going on in America if we're going to ever fix this problem. So let's take our heads out of the sand. America, let's wake up. We can think better than we've been thinking. We can do better than we've been doing. It's time for change. We've had enough of this stuff, and descendants of American slaves have had enough of it, even if they don't understand what they had enough of. I thank you very much.